Seems like I'll have a little bit of overlap in some of these. Actually, this one goes there. But I think this is just barely big enough because it's, you know, about a few inches shorter in either direction. Four-piece center console, shifter, tunnel, assembled. Oof, this thing is gonna be really exacting, I think is the word. It's just gonna be frustrating, time-consuming. It looks okay. I think it plays the part. It's difficult working with something like this that's kind of falling apart and constantly shedding. Oh boy. Right now it's just drying on top of the hood. It's rough on one side. Here, this is the driver's side, right where the foot rubs it. It seems like it started to shred a little bit. The rest of it is still intact structurally, but there is a lot of fading. You can see a pretty nice line right there. So here's what I'll do. I'm gonna do every panel on the carpet except for the center console. I'm going to put it all together, and then I'm gonna install this. It should be dry by tomorrow. And I'm going to hope that it looks okay. And if it does not, then I will probably pursue this plan. I think cooler heads will prevail, and I can also use this material here to make the pieces that are missing on both cars, which is from A pillar to B pillar. There's a chunk right there that's missing. The other one that goes here ends right behind that post, and that's these failures here. I typically like Tetris puzzles and little Brainiac tests like that, challenges, but this was very difficult. My back is exhausted too, just from the last 2 days of scrubbing down the whole rub-a-dub-dub. And right now, one of the challenges was certain things have the binding on the edges, and I wanted the binding, so you can't have all four, but I wanted at least two. I want the sides that show the most to have the bound edge, and sometimes you can't get it, but that sort of solidified this piece, needing to be up against an edge. These. So my corners were all taken, and then the rest was just whatever you can take, whatever you can fit in. I think the point I'm trying to make is it took way too long to figure this out, but a lot of time was spent scratching my head and answering phone calls and then making some of these pieces here, which I quite like. I don't think this was a two-piece thing. I think this was a two-piece thing, and I don't think it was a one-piece, so I'm excited to show you what it all looks like when it's in there. I think this is as far as I'll get tonight. It's approaching 1 in the morning, and, well, another full day of work tomorrow, so I'll try to wrap it up then. It seems to be at the part when it's going a little faster now. I've got the fronts in, and I still have some finishing touches to do on that, but pretty okay progress for now. The important thing is that I'm using the factory snaps, and you can see one there. There's two on this piece. Another one right there, and they're basically these guys with a 3-prong ring on it, and when they're attached, they do sit really deep in the high pile old carpet. You almost don't notice them, but they're there. And then on the inside, you just sort of bend them straight, and then the two pieces come out just like that. So pretty cool. I like using them. I think I'll try to get this piece in there as well because it's original and it looks nice as well. It looks okay. But I do have the floor mats that are going to go on top of it, so let's not get too carried away with things like this. It is stitched, however, and if I put it in, I'd have to glue it, and if I do that, it might not look great, so TBD. Parts have arrived today from VP. Let's take a look. Hope that's the right size. You remember these plastic dashboard gauge cluster screws? These go in and attach in diagonal spots on the back of the gauge cluster. VP is now making them out of brass, and they are well worth the money because they're not going to break like this brittle plastic. And new valve springs. Beautiful. VP has a really good price on the glue for the seal around the windshield, and I believe this goes in. This will go in after you put in the gasket. Otherwise, you're going to make quite a mess. 3M has the same thing, auto bedding and glazing compound, but the price was right. The lady of the hour. Look at this beauty. Made in the US of A. This is, allegedly, the K-cam. The stamping on the back looks like a V or a K that's the rear end polyurethane bushing kit. Trailing arms, wowee. Trailing rods, panhard bar, etc., etc. This is our main bearing set. Because most of the Volvo engines are 4-cylinder, the 6-cylinder kits are essentially a kit and a half of the 4-cylinder stuff. Yep, I decided to bite the bullet because I don't want to have to go in there later and change it, but it is the transmission mount for the B30 transmissions, the M400 and the M410. The lower wishbone has very affordable bushings. The top bushings are unfortunately too expensive. And when I say too expensive, I mean $180 a piece. But we got polys for the lower. And more Alu-Glide. This is the rod bearing set. Ruh-roh. Are these 10,000ths over? A beautiful set of head bolts for the B30. These have a little bit of a shoulder on them. I think these are the same bolts for the B18, B20. 14 bolts. That's the countershaft bearing, the very small one that's going to be tricky to get in, but fingers crossed. And then we have overdrive bearings, transmission bearings. With the new camshaft comes new lifters. Camshaft bearings, and the bottom end seal kit. All right, gotta run some numbers, but I think everything's here. And yeah, lots of work ahead of me.
More slowly than stationary particles. As strange and counterintuitive as it seems, time dilation is a law of nature.
I want to take a moment to talk about a couple of lessons learned while building this carpet over the last few days. The first one is cut more than you need. And you know the saying, plan ahead, or measure twice, cut once, measure thrice, cut once. But great band by the way, I really think that having extra material is the way to go with carpets, because the original carpet in this car has shrunk, especially right here on these rear mats, and that made it very difficult for me to try to fill some of the gaps. Be careful when you're screwing into carpet. The thing I've noticed is screws like to grab a thread and they will pull it, and it can actually rip a vein of carpet in a elongated pattern. So you could lose a strip of your fabric. Remember that this is a woven thing and you don't want to be sitting there with tweezers and super glue trying to make it look okay. This one can apply to a lot of general things, but you will make mistakes, so be kind to yourself. You know, laugh it off. It'll help keep things light. It will get pretty frustrating in a lot of spots. But things like steam and glue, which I'm trying to keep glue to a minimum, but steam will help shape a lot of these areas. That I am following the factory shapes and factory pieces all the way around and making the few that were missing. Have a sharp pair of scissors and or a sharp razor blade. Nothing more dangerous than dull blades, dull scissors. This time around I did invest in a seam sealer, so once I finish all of this, I'm gonna pull it out, seal all the edges with the latex glue seam sealer. It should hold and prevent fraying on all the edges that are unfinished. This is an olefin, which I think is a full synthetic. Think of it like plastic fibers. They're sun resistant, stain resistant, fade resistant. In addition to plan ahead, you do want to think about 5 or 6 steps ahead, because sometimes cutting something that you think is going to be right may end up causing another section that you do later to come up short. So the more you work in small amounts here and there and then do your trimming kind of in phases as everything comes together, I think the better off the end result will be. The original carpet has a higher tolerance for forgiveness when it comes to curves and bends. This is a very rigid outdoor rug, but you know, anything's better than the original carpet. So I do feel pretty proud of myself for getting this far, and I'm looking forward to showing you the end result in a few hours time. And there's no way that center console is gonna work. It's just too far gone. And Amy's is the better one, but I would feel bad cutting into it because it has no hole for the shifter. And I think that's a pretty good thing to keep with the car so that it stays complete with the matched original rug. This back piece really coming together nicely. A little bit of trimming to do. We'll just see how this one fits over it. But in the meantime, there was a comment that was made on episode 22 or something, and it's like, hey, good on you for using original parts, a lot better quality than the aftermarket stuff made today. And I was just thinking about that as I'm constantly putting these snaps through a lot of abuse, and they are so cool. I mean, they're brass, and you can see, you know, that was the first location there, and they really do handle removing them and putting them somewhere else very well. The only one that was actually broken was one that was rusted on I think somewhere on Amy. It was just completely deteriorated, but the chrome half is perfect on all of them, and the metal is really good, the brass on most of them. So very, very happy with those. Hopefully some of these wrinkles here will go out in time, but you know, if they last, it's fine. It seems like it's a little bit of the stretch from this panel and the lack of filling down below. Hopefully with enough standing in there or stepping, somebody will be able to soften it up, and then those wrinkles will go away.
But then he's also going to put that seat in there too.
I just want to know what you think.
Oh, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't use the center carpet.
No, the center carpet needs to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, it's gonna be hard to make one, but I'll try.
You do your best. I mean, you made all this though.
Yeah, that's all straight though. The rest is, you know, these got some curves in them.
But those pieces they have the pattern already on them, and then you just have to make them.
Yeah.
I think you can do it, babe.
I also have this binding that's like a glue binding, which I could try.
Okay.
It'll be able to make
Then
this.
you can just cut it to
Yeah.
to fit nice.
I know that the answer is what you were both saying. I just needed some motivation.
Yeah, I know what you don't want.
Encouragement, I think, is the word.
There you go. Or
But you see, Bruce, how beautiful he is, right?
Rubber.
Because
Yeah, no, these things matter. Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
material like this, right?
Ruh-roh. Hey, let's lay that on the tunnel.
But that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So you get your pattern, right? And then you could basically make a rubber mat for it.
Okay. I'm curious if you lay that on the tunnel, like that way, yeah, kind of horizontally.
Like this.
Oh.
You know, you're obviously going to need a bigger one.
Flip it and rotate it 90 degrees.
Like that.
Now turn it over so we can see the floral pattern. That's it. That's our winner right there.
Oh boy.
What a beautiful center console. A little bit of flair in this car. That's all it's needed.
There you
I
go.
bought these floor mats for the floor mats, you know.
But they're cheap enough to where if you fudge one up, you're not going to lose any sleep over it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that might make it difficult. I wouldn't get like a 3-dimensional one because that might be difficult to glue together.
Sure.
But you already have your pattern, right?
Yeah, it's just all in cardboard.
Yeah, you have your pattern, you cut it out, and you could actually probably get away with either using a super adhesive or just melting the edges. And just heat that edge together and just kind of pinch it together to make it look like it's factory. This is the backside of it. Let's see how it fits. Maybe your boy's dumb for not using a sewing machine, or maybe he's a genius, because it kind of worked. This seam sealing tape is really good. She's a little too wide though, so I need to be aware of my clearances. My tolerances need to be little. I think we got ourselves a game plan here, folks. Best case scenario, the new carpeting is going to be bulky enough that I don't have to use the old carpeting as the underside padding to kind of fill in the gaps. Because you don't want a chunky tunnel. I don't need it looking like it needs to be on a diet or somebody thinking I got a T5 trains in there, because I sure don't. Well, I got the pieces finally trimmed to the millimeter size that I believe I'm going to need. But I must be a glutton for punishment, because I got a little carried away here and was like, hey, if I'm doing this, I may as well do the trunk. So there's the trunk pieces as well. Managed to fit everything on here. It was a tight fit again, but yeah, I'm actually very proud of this. So we'll cut, we'll stitch, we'll glue, all the good things, and then finally we'll seam seal every junction on this carpet, because I would like it to not fray. And then we should be finished with carpet. Oh man, 3 days already. I put a little bit of the latex seam sealing glue on this junction, and then I added the tape, the same tape that I put on the inside of the other carpet. So what actually I've discovered is with the sun, it'll still get soft and slowly pull apart. To avoid that, and the work that I just put into it, I am going to stitch the carpet in place to make those two bends permanent. Unfortunately, the tape is so good and so sticky that it's actually made stitching it very difficult. Got a leather kit here, leather repair, and it's got these hefty needles, which are very good for things like carpet. But as you can see, I'm just completely sticky with glue, and so is the thread. But I just did a regular, it's not really a whipping stitch, or maybe it is a whipping stitch. Running stitch would just be if I went in and out, back and forth along the whole way, but I just did a whip.
And there's cross stitch, there's back stitch, there's blanket stitch, there's the baggin stitch, which actually looks really pretty. That's more for leather saddlebags and things. One side's finished, onward to the next. You really can't tell in the video, but because I'm using a doubled up stitch, which means, you know, it goes through the needle and then both ends here tie together, I have a length of thread that is twice my body. So that makes it really difficult to start, because at the very beginning I'm making these huge motions and then pulling the thread and pulling until it finally goes. And then the next one. And after a while it does kind of get to a reasonable length where it's just one full arm's length away, and then I can stitch it faster and faster. But I'm hoping the second side will go back much easier. These leather thimbles, if you will, that came with the kit are actually very useful, because my fingers would be raw immediately, or I'd be using pliers and that could break the needle. Well, the little sewing kit proved itself nicely, and the stitch, it may not be the prettiest thing in the world, but I'm quite happy with it. And it's more importantly going to ensure a long service life of this piece. I'll put the centerpiece back in, but I won't do the rest of the interior carpet until I've finished some more of the dirty work, which would be the dashboard installation, and my seat belts, which will be arriving in a few weeks. Those are going to require those side panels to come out, so I will keep the carpet out until then.